ਦਿਲ ਪਰਦੇਸੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਨਿਤਦਾ ਰੋਣਾ ਪੈ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਨਾਲ ਰੰਜੇਠੇ ਜੋਗੀ ਦੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਜੋਗਣ ਹੋਣਾ ਪੈ ਜਾਊਗਾ
ਇਸ਼ਕ ਦੇ ਅਲਿਆ ਜ਼ਖਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਖੁਦ ਹੱਸ ਕੇ ਮੂੰਹ ਸੀ ਲਾਂਗੀ ਜੇ ਯਾਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਮੈਂ ਘਟ ਘਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੀ ਲਾਂਗੀ
Hey everyone, welcome to Flywheel, your number one source for everything FrxETH, DeFi, and everything in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, well, you come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave, here with capital K, and we're here to help you harness the power of the Flywheel. And Kiet, who do we have on this week?
This week we have the one, the only, the Trollmeister, Gwart on. Gwart.
Gwart.
Everybody.
Gwart.
Yes.
And if you want to hear everything we had to say about Gwart and this interview, because it was insightful, you got to go to our Substack. We filmed our first ever post-game show. That's right. Where me, Kit, and Sam dive into the episode, our latest thoughts and like what we took out of it. We have all the insights there. So make sure, go to the link below. Check out what we're thinking. Get into our heads. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree. Go ahead. Go find that. And if you want to catch up with everything Flywheel, don't forget to subscribe. Let us know how you like the whole pod in the comments. Give us a like. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at FlywheelFi. Don't forget to join the discussion on Telegram at FlywheelFi. You can follow me on Twitter at DeFi Dave.
Follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And let's get into harnessing the Flywheel on this one, folks. Let's go. Do you hold ETH but don't know what to do with it? Want to earn those juicy liquid staking derivative yields, but don't know where to start? Well, FrxETH is there for you. FrxETH is Frax's native LSD solution, allowing you to earn boosted yields in multiple ways on your ETH. If you want to get started, go to app.frax.finance and turn your ETH into FrxETH today. GM, everyone. Today on Flywheel, we have on the one and only Gwart. Gwart, I've been following for a bit. He's really entertaining. I find his commentary hilarious and informative at the same time. And you know when someone's good is when they make you laugh because what they're saying is true. And he just has such a good like pulse on like what's being talked about and like the current meta or what's at the moment. So Gwart. It is a pleasure to have you on. Welcome to Flywheel.
Thank you, guys. I think you've probably oversold my level of expertise, but hopefully we can have a fun conversation.
Dude, honestly, no one knows what's going on. That's the first rule of crypto. Like, you know what you need to know. Like, not everyone's a dev, not everyone's a trader, not everyone's a builder in BD. We all have our little pockets. We all have our little, blinders that we need to see to survive and maybe even thrive in crypto. But yeah, that's my little anecdote to start the podcast. But let's get this started with your Twitter bio. So in it says, just because Beanie Babies crashed in value doesn't mean that they weren't important. And I believe this is something that Gary Vaynerchuk said at Davos, like looking back at your tweets, like, can you get into like where your bio came from? Am I right about that? And what it means and why it's there? Why is it your bio?
Yeah, I saw this recently on, I guess I saw the clip of him saying this. And, well, it's, yeah, like, the thing is, I guess the premise was that, just because maybe some NFTs go to zero or, there's kind of like this hyper speculation in NFTs that, well, it shouldn't like discount what we're building. But, I mean, I don't know, like were Beanie Babies like the printing press for like the stuffed animal industry? Like I didn't even know how to interpret that really. I thought it was pretty hilarious at the time. And yeah, like I think that this is somewhat of a common theme, I would say, in crypto as a whole. Like you get people who, and like honestly, I have no like I don't know much about Gary Vee except really from this clip, and I mean I know he's highly involved in the NFT community, but like I just imagined people hearing this and being like, "Tit, like that's actually a really good point." And I'm sitting here and I'm like, "What does that possibly mean?" Like, I think that I think that stuffed animals existed like long before Beanie Babies, and I think they existed like long after, and like yeah, it was just like it wasn't so clear to me what exactly that meant. But so anyways, it's definitely a troll. I don't know what exactly prompted me to put that in there apart from that being like, yeah, this is like a really good metaphor for like crypto because you can just like say whatever. Like there's no like you don't have to have any like rational thought behind it. You can just like say things. And so yeah, naturally I was like, that's my new Twitter bio. Like
Yeah.
so
So
yeah,
it's basically
that
yeah. So
go ahead.
yeah. So basically, it's something that's just so ridiculous. Like this statement, like Beanie Babies, doesn't just because they crashed in value doesn't mean that they were important. But like Beanie Babies compared to like NFTs and what NFTs are like trying to become, like just all the it's NFTs is put up as this thing like everything that's like a digital object. Actually, let me roll that back. Sorry. Let me take a drink right here. I think we're trying to overanalyze this statement.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
No, 100%.
We're trying to overanalyze.
I mean, I don't know.
It's such a
if
ridiculous
anyone knows
statement. Like
about the stuffed animal market. Like I have no idea if anybody is like tracking the stuffed animal market and is like, oh yeah, Beanie Babies like transformed and like totally disrupted stuffed animals. And all of us are like, what are you talking about? But like I'm sure his supporters like did like that is spot on. Like you really nailed that.
Yeah.
And like it's just if you embrace the absurd, perhaps like that's the best way to like synthesize this. Like we're definitely overthinking it, but like for a good reason.
Yeah, because it's just so retarded sometimes. I swear to God. Like NFTs are just pictures right now. I mean, like they could become tickets, they could become useful, they could be used to like, track supply chains, they could be used for like, actual purpose to the real world if it gets connected to the real world. But for now, they're just like more chips in the casino, and it's just a game.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Of,
and like
yeah,
I actually agree.
Yeah.
And like that's why the analogy is so funny. It's because like, dude, like I don't know anybody that like cares about stuffed animals. Like I think Beanie Babies are maybe the only stuffed animal that I could name. But like NFTs are actually probably like have a better future than that. So yeah, I mean we're definitely like psychoanalyzing this, and it's like there's nothing to it. It's just like
there's nothing
totally outrageous.
It's just a shit post. Some things can just be a shit post.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next thing. Like, how'd you get into shit posting on Twitter, and like how do you choose on like what you like commentate on?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like I first got into crypto around like probably the Pico top of 2018, and I bought Bitcoin at that point, and then I engaged in a little degeneracy on the side in the ICO boom. And
we do a little degeneracy here and there.
Yeah, exactly. And then I wasn't really I was definitely like a day tripper or whatever whatever people like to call them. Like I was in and out. And then around I would say like the tail end of DeFi summer, I started getting back into crypto a bit. I was playing a lot of online poker at the time, and I started cashing out in Bitcoin, and that was like it was just fortunate timing. It wasn't like there was nothing more to it than just sort of being in the right place at the right time. And then yeah, I got into like a little like I would say more like the alt L1 and like the tail end of that period of time. And well, as I'm sure you're aware, like nobody really had time to figure out what any of these things were doing. You could miss a great opportunity if you tried to dig into, the Ponzi too hard. So, yeah. And then like, I suppose around when the when the bull market started to kind of dissipate and it was clear that probably start pulling money off the chain, I started to like get a bit more attached to the space and the community, if that's one of the terms. And I did feel like, I started actually writing this Substack, and the first like the actually this is the reason I started the account, is because it was primarily to advertise my Substack, which in retrospect I realize people don't really like to read long form, and so I've kind of somewhat given up on
Actually, that's
that.
how I
But
found you, was your Substack.
oh, really? Okay, well, I figured like
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong and the market was right. Like Substacks are boring, and everybody's got a Substack, and everybody thinks that they have like very novel information to disseminate. And so I was like, well. But then, so the essence actually, ironically, was like I started my first few Substacks were like specifically about like VCs in the space and like some of the reservations I had about them, and they were serious. Like it's like I was taking this very seriously, and naturally, like my Twitter account is very not serious. At times, at times I will like a lot of times I'll ask some kind of like clearly charged questions that I know will get some people or communities riled up, and then I'll just be like, whoa, like I'm just the messenger here, like I'm just asking the questions,
Yeah.
and
I'm just
so
Gwart. I'm just Gwart.
yeah, exactly, like whoa, like I don't have a dog in this fight. So yeah, and like I do find a lot of it really fascinating. I'm not so like I don't have like some very high conviction on anything in particular. Maybe well, I'm very optimistic about the space as a whole. Like and I really mean that. But I'm not so sure yet like what I'm very optimistic on, And I think uh we're in an interesting point right now with the bear market where, especially at least, insofar as DeFi goes, like we're all coming to like this realization that like, it's not immediately clear that people want to use these unless they're being paid to do so. And so like we're having to sort of rework like what we're really doing. And so like I'm mainly just a sideline heckler. I don't have like very strong, opinions on a whole lot, and like I have very malleable opinions too. Like I wouldn't say that there's anything that I'm like, oh yeah, like this is definitely what I believe in, and like I'm unwilling to change. I think I have been like sort of a maybe first and foremost, like ironically, like a Bitcoiner through and through. Like at least like I'm not at all interested really in the Bitcoin community. Like, and I don't spend time in the Bitcoin community, but I'm also sort of like I feel that Bitcoin is kind of going to do its thing, and like I don't need to provide input so much on that. So I suppose that's like one of my like belief sets, but like I'm not embedded in like the Bitcoin maxi community by any means. Like that's not. I wouldn't say that's like my focus, but so.
Yeah, I noticed that you like pick on like narratives, like whatever like people are like hot on, or whatever like the threaders are trending on and coming out with, whether it's restaking with iGame layer or LSDs, this and that. And like for me personally, like I got LSD pilled in the summer. And this was like extra, like talking to a few people in the Frax community. I'm just like, and it was just kind of like, outside the curve ecosystem, like how is Frax going to support itself? And the only thing that I could think of was like FrxETH and like what they were building there. I'm just like, that's when I had my aha moment. And then like everybody else had their aha moment after Dejan Spartan tweeted about Rocket Pool and Coin. And so I'm curious, like what your thoughts on like the whole LSD narrative and also the eigenlayer narrative, which is like another, like it's a derivative quite literally of the LSD narrative. Cause at the end of the day, it's the risk-free rate of DeFi and crypto is the ETH LSD, like the whole validator rate. And so like, what are your thoughts on it? Like, what do you like about it, and like what do you think people are just like too, or what do you not like about it and people are like kind of like being too optimistic about?
Yeah. Well, I wrote about this. I don't know that it was so coherent, but I did write about this. I find LSDs to be like really quite fascinating. Like from from the highest level, it's like sort of a bizarre premise in a sense. Like um, ETH's staking, like ETH's design is that there is, and I'm obviously really simplifying this, but ETH's design is such that you are incentivized to ascribe some illiquidity to your ETH, and in return you get some nominal yield, and in theory, I suppose, just in this equation specifically, the yield you receive is more or less equivalent to the opportunity cost of staking that ETH. And so, like, this is I assume most listeners understand this, and like, this is not so revelatory right now. I think that the interesting thing about LSDs is it's very much being able to have your cake and eat it too, in the sense that you are, in theory, locking up this ETH, but you immediately get a receipt for doing so, with which you can go and engage in whatever other degeneracy that you want, or maybe less degenerate behavior as well. I'm not suggesting like any archetype of LSD users, but I sort of came to the I sort of came to the go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing at the same, the degeneracy of LSD users. It's like that we chose that as our acronym.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well, I sort of came to the conclusion that like the rational thing to do with your ETH is to stake it and to receive an LSD. And I think that, so I'm not going to be like the biggest spokesman for home validating. So like, I think this will be somewhat contentious amongst the people who feel very strongly about that. And well, I'm willing to accept the backlash. But I think that if you can immediately like liquefy your ETH, you should essentially always do this. And my rationale is sort of what it comes down to in my mind, and I'm just using like Lido as an example here. The function that I view it as is like, Lido takes 10% of rewards. And so if I go to Lido with 10 ETH and I receive 10 staked ETH, in my mind, what I'm like, the purest equation is 10% of those, let's like make some kind of like arbitrarily high like protocol stake and rewards just for the sake of this equation. Let's say that ETH is 10%. Okay, so at the end of a year, I have 1 ETH, right? Okay, so in my mind, the function is, can I earn 0.1 ETH doing whatever I do in DeFi? I think the short answer to that should be yes. I think the ability to have that Ethereum liquid is, well, you should ascribe like some very high percentage to that realistically. I think the counter argument to this is, well, you take on counterparty risk, you take on smart contract risk. If you go down that route, and once again, like this is just how I view this, but if you kind of start to go down that route, you have to also now ascribe risk to, okay, do you know how to run your own validator at home? Do you know the bandwidth requirements? Do you know how to prevent inactivity leaks, any type of slashing events? And like, I think realistically, I mean, I would consider myself like, well, actually, I wouldn't consider myself that tech savvy, to be honest, but I would consider myself like, relatively tech savvy, like at least in like working with the chain. Let's put it that way. And I don't know that I want to take on that risk. And like, I mean, your internet goes out. And I'm giving like sort of petty examples here, but I guess my only point is saying that like I think the people who argue for self-validating, like if you are going to if you're going to take on like the smart contract risk and the risk of the validators on the other side, of the umbrella of validators under Lido or Frax or whoever it may be, you also have to now take into account, you doing it yourself. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
the concept is quite interesting, like really, because in a sense, like kind of coming back to what I was saying initially, it's like if you can stake this and immediately also receive a liquid version back, and there's a tremendous amount of liquidity for this staking derivative, I start to understand, and I don't want to like push any angles here, like I'm just a fence straddler, but the way I see it is I start to understand why there could be like very high returns to scale with staking protocols, and why a single staking protocol, in my mind, granted, once again, this is not like the Ethereum consensus view here, but in my mind, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, what I am really concerned about once I put my ETH in that liquid staking derivative is, can I get the nominal amount of that ETH on the open market? Either can I convert it through a curve pool or Uniswap for that amount, or can I quickly convert that to fiat? And so it's quite
Yeah.
interesting. I think, I would say that it renders the opportunity cost essentially zero. And I think you could make, a compelling argument that it's actually like a strictly dominated strategy, if you will, to stake your ETH and receive an
Yeah.
LSD.
So you're basically talking about like what a rational economic actor will do with their ETH. There's this proof of stake, it's out. There's this opportunity to earn yield on your ETH. And there's two options. You can either, it's like a whole A/B test. You can either home stake and like take care of everything yourself and get all that yield yourself, but you have to worry about like bandwidth requirements. You have to worry about like keeping it all this other stuff. Or you can choose an LSD. Most people would not want to choose the home staking requirements. They would choose the LSD. Now, okay, we decided like majority of people are going to be LSDs. Now it's a matter with LSDs of which one to choose. And there's all these different options. There's like Coinbase ETH, there's FrxETH, Lido, Rocket Pool, this and that. And people have, different things they care about. Some people just want the highest yield. And when they want the highest yield, they go to FrxETH because that's where it is. Or the plug, or they want to be around like the most, maybe they just like trust Coinbase and like, they're like, they're not really sure about like life, like on chain, and they're like, so they go to like Coinbase and put it in that because people just trust Coinbase and like blah, blah, blah. Or they're decentralization maxis and they like subscribe to like the most decentralized above all else. And so they go to like Rocket Pool. So I want to get your take on like, what is like the rational economic choice when it comes to choosing your LSD?
Yeah. Well, I really don't know. And I think that like post Shanghai we'll have like a better idea about a lot of this. Like, it's quite interesting, I think, actually. And there's something else that I think has come up with this that I found like it's very it's given me a lot of fodder to tweet about. I think like these like the Rocket Pool people are like very passionate, and I think that they have in many ways like, wow, they're like so they're sort of endearing to me at this point because they're so like aggro about their protocol. I'm like, well, like I kind of respect that actually. And then I'm not so familiar with FrxETH, to be honest. I know like some of the swell guys, like I generally support like, this being an open market construct. I think what I have seen, which I found quite interesting, is I think Lido is a very good case study on where we are at right now in crypto in terms of incentives and whether or not we really ascribe to this pure play incentive driven, the purest iteration of free market capitalism, or are we going to like take sort of a a mission driven view. And a lot of what I've seen, there's been, I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware, there has been a good bit of pushback on Lido, really capturing a large amount of the staked ETH. And, it's quite interesting. Like, in a
Yeah.
sense, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I understand like this, I understand the concerns that this is potentially a centralizing force in many ways. I also, on the other hand, I'm like, what we have here is a company essentially. Like, I think I don't have any reservations about calling Lido a company. Their shareholders are like relatively small and close, I would say, as a team, and they saw a need in the market. They executed on that, like, at least in terms of crypto standards, they executed excellently. But like, they have a great UI, they have a great UX, and what Lido saw was the power of sort of what I was referring to before, like these very strong network effects. And they realize, if we can integrate this into DeFi, and really push early to capture a lot of this, there are some real exponential like possibilities to garner a large portion of the stake. And so it's very interesting to me. Like, in one sense, I understand like the reservations of the ETH community, and on the other hand, I'm like, if we really are going to ascribe to like this incentive based, like, pure play capitalism, like, this should be well within the bounds of that. Lido, they crushed it. Like, that's what they did. And I'm like, like I said, like, I don't have a dog in this fight. Like, I'm kind of, sitting on the sidelines. So I think there are certainly opportunities for other, projects and protocols to understand how they can create synergies with their own. Like, so I don't know, honestly. Like I said, I'm not so very familiar with FrxETH, but I assume that's like sort of the premise. And like, I think there will be competition, but like, it's funny. Like, I've in this like bizarre sense, I've almost been like a bit sympathetic towards Lido, like for no other reason than like, like, these guys crushed it. And like, if and now coming like higher level in a sense, like in this incentive based thinking, it's like, if you didn't want this to happen like this, then you shouldn't have like coded Ethereum like that. Like, that's like a very simplistic view, but like, this is what happens when we allow like a network, and you either follow the rules or you don't. And like, they followed the rules from what I can tell. Like, they played fair. And I think that, other applications are playing catch up, but yeah, I think it's just like, we have to see this from kind of like both angles here.
Yeah, you make a really good point, and it reminds me of two things. I have two things I have to say. I remember seeing years ago, I think it was like 2013 or 2014, something happened with the BTC miners where like one pool got 51% of the stake. I mean, one like miner.
Yeah, and they got like heckled,
and they voluntarily,
out of,
yeah, they got heckled. Like, they socially like got, like you said, socially heckled out of like that stake, and like they don't even like exist anymore. I mean, of their hash rate. That's so funny, I think, in like proof of stake terms now, but yeah, hash rate. But now it's like, we coded like, we created the field with certain incentives. Like you said, Lido executed brilliantly. They had a great UI, which is something rare in crypto. And, they have this huge stake, and it's only getting bigger. It's only getting bigger by the day. And it's funny. The second thing I was going to say was, I see proposals in both the Lido governance and Rocket Pool governance about like, we're going to self-limit. Oh, but do you know what's so ridiculous about this? So like, the Rocket Pool people are trying to dunk on the Lido people. And like, because the Lido people like voted not to self-limit themselves, which is like the economically rational thing to do.
Duh.
But the Rocket Pool people, they did it when they only had 1.5K votes, like 1,500 votes. That was it. That's when they chose to dunk on them. Not like right when they started. Like, it'd be one thing if they like did it when it was like near the end of the vote and it was like about to pass. It's like, okay, like, this is a W for decentralization maxis, but like, they just want to dunk at them as soon as possible. It wasn't about like decentralization, like, look at us, because they didn't even prove themselves yet. It was like, it was more about like trying to like own the competition. And like, I'm just like, that's kind of sad in my opinion. Like, and I can see how there you had this like one tweet of like, if you're stranded on the island, just say Lido and Rocket Pool will come to the rescue. Like, I was like, but it's like kind of like that. Like, I kind of consider like, you know, I really respect what Rocket Pool's doing. Like they've, you know, I think we need to have balance in terms of like options and like the decentralized options. But like some of the people in the Rocket Pool community are like the BTC maxis of the ETH community, it seems like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, if anything, just because I like support maximum chaos, like whenever they get like really uppity, I'm like, I kind of like that. Like, I like your spirit. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and frankly, I don't care that much. But like, I kind of respect it, and like, I'm friends with some of the swell people. Like, I mean, you know, this is gonna play out how it plays out. Like, that's not like such a revelatory thing to say, but I think we'll see. But I have found it, you know, a bit interesting to kind of watch these dynamics and see kind of what happens. And yeah, I you know, it wouldn't surprise
What's swell,
me.
By the way?
I don't know. It's another like staking derivative. I mean, I'm not like so familiar with what
I
they
didn't
do.
heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but what were you gonna say? I cut you off there.
No. Like I was going to wait. Now you're like having me double check. Yes. Well, I don't know. They're another staking derivative. I'm friends with them, so like I support them. But like I don't support them. You know what I mean? Like it's just whatever. Like I don't have any allegiance here.
You're an agent of maximum chaos. That's what Gwart is all about.
Yeah. But no, like I really don't know. Like I could see like, you know, there being a couple applications or protocols with like a very large amount of the stake, and then some, you know, it's interesting. Like I do think, and like this is just like total speculation here, but I do think there are ways that specific applications can incentivize users to use their liquid staking derivative. And you know, the thing about liquid staking derivatives, which I didn't really mention before, but like this is, well, from what I see, like largely in DeFi as a whole, like this is one of the most fundamentally lucrative endeavors, insofar as almost everybody will choose, I think, to stake, and it's like a constant revenue stream. Like, if you can provide a liquid staking service, then that is like an ongoing whatever percent you take, you know, whatever nominal percent. And I do think this will like not dissimilar to Bitcoin. Actually, this will ultimately converge on zero, which is good for the end user, you know. And like, I guess Lido is 10% right now. Over the long run, I mean, competition will drive this down, but like this will be like this is another reason that I think this is quite interesting. Like this is one of the first applications where I'm like, this is a true recurring revenue stream. It's just like a slight arbitrage between liquid staking and you know, validating and having the validator set.
Yeah, and you want to hear how FrxETH works, because I feel like you would really fuck with FrxETH, because like everything you're describing is just like it's just up seeing with it. All right, here I go. Here I go shilling again. So FrxETH. So what Frax realized before any other LSD, that, you know, what LSDs are, they're ETH peg stablecoins at its like most basic form. It's just a stablecoin pegged to ETH. So they constructed their system that way. So FrxETH is a 2-token system. They have FrxETH, which is the equivalent of WETH, and I call it ChadWETH. And they have sFrxETH, which is the actual vault where you stake your FrxETH and earn the yield. So like you convert your ETH to FrxETH and you stake it in the sFrxETH vault. So all FrxETH is in validators as we speak, but not all FrxETH are in the sFrxETH vault. So you might ask, where's the other FrxETH? Well, it's in the curve pool, and who has the most convex power? It's Frax. And who has mastered that whole ecosystem with bone incentives and just like has the whole ecosystem on lock? It's Frax. And so you have the FrxETH ETH curve pool, where Frax is directing incentives to use with their voting power, with their vote incentives, this and that. And what they're able to do better than anyone is to maintain that peg. Kiet every week on FraxCheck checks that FrxETH pegged and it's always like 0.9996 or some shit like that. It is perfect. You cannot. So you talk about like redeeming. If you want to like switch out, there's no better place to do it for any LSD than FrxETH. And on top of that, Frax has this whole ecosystem. Like, you know, how Frax has kind of imagined it is like Frax, Fraxland, Frax, you know, they build all these different primitives and people are like, oh, they're building too much, they're all over the place. It's like, no, they're all parts to the same thing. All the primitives of the Frax ecosystem complement and supplement each other. So what they have right now is they have an FrxETH pool in Fraxland. And you can go and actually like lever up on your FrxETH if you want. And there's all these different yield strategies that I know Kiet's gonna like. I'm sure you've done some research, and he's gonna actually like have some more programs in the future on Flywheel about that you can do with FrxETH, like with FrxETH, with FrxETH, and there's just gonna be more coming out. So Wow.
Sorry,
I didn't know you're that excited, Gwart.
Likes it.
Yo, that was actually perfect timing. That was actually perfect timing right there. And so, but yeah, so, he's got that dog in him. He got real excited about it. And so, yeah, so like, that's like the FrxETH system. Like this is like phase one of it. And right now, like, so the biggest critique of like the FrxETH system is, you know, it's phase one. Like right now, the FrxETH team runs the validators. They have actually the highest validator score out of like all the LSDs at like 99.9%, like of all it, because like they're just getting off the ground. They want to make sure it's smooth, and like they're gonna go on this path of like decentralization over time, like other protocols like Synthetics and other ones have done. And so with FrxETH, like once Shanghai comes out, they're going to like allow people to bond via Fraxland to run their own validators, but they want to, you know, they care about like security as, you know, the highest priority. So it's on the roadmap and like it's there, it's coming. But it just makes more sense to do that after Shanghai when withdrawals are available. So that's FrxETH. That's my shill. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to have to probably like read about this. There's a lot of information at once. I'm more of a visual so yeah, I'll report back for sure. And yeah, like I'm bullish, like, but I'm bullish everything. Yeah. So I don't know what you can take away from that.
Bullish everything. It's had the highest.
Bullish competition.
It's had the highest.
I am.
Yeah. I'm both. Yeah.
Okay.
Bullish competition. Yeah, it's had the highest yields out of all of them. And so yeah, it's been fun to ride that wave for a bit. I recommend watching our Everything You Need to Know About FrxETH interview with Jack.
Yeah, that's like, what I need to watch.
Yeah, he's just like it's so funny. He's this like college kid at UCLA, and he's I think he's about to graduate, or he has like 1 year left or something. But the best part is at the end of the interview, we asked him. So we always do a lightning round, and we asked him if he had any hobbies. And he was like, "Hobbies? I don't have hobbies. Like hobbies are for like those are weird. What do you mean?" And I'm just like, "Wow, we have the right one. We have the perfect autist right here. Let's go." But yeah.
Gwart, I actually wanted to ask you, like, you're a agent of mass chaos and you don't really have a dog in a fight, but you must have a dog in crypto that you're backing, right? Like you must have some bags. Like, can we talk about one or two items in your bags? I want to hear your thoughts on things that you do have a dog in.
I hold Bitcoin and I hold Ethereum. Those are like very lame answers. I'm really, like, it's not that I have like some loud voice or it's not like I think that I could, influence people. It's not like, it's really not even that interesting to me to like discuss. Like, I'd much rather just kind of like troll. And ironically, like a lot of the times I'm fudding my own bags. Like, so maybe that's a hint. Like, I don't have like it's not like something that I'm really interested in and like tweeting about. I'd much rather talk about like just some crypto economics theory that's just totally made up and people run with, and I'm like, like this is it's a lot funnier to me to kind of troll about like, well, and to be fair, like a lot of times I am trolling about certain protocols, like as like you were asking, like as of late I've been like very very like active trolling about Eigenlayer, which, you know, I don't understand at all, like beyond like surface layer. So naturally, I feel like very compelled to voice my opinion about it. But like, yeah, as a general statement, I'm not like one to really talk that much about my bags. And I will say that like I held like a lot of, like, I was degenning as hard as the rest of you guys, like in, you know, after DeFi summer, I really like the Altel ones. That was like my like actual grind time. But like I said, I wasn't so focused on what any of this stuff did. And now that the bear market's come around, I'm like, oh, maybe I should take a look at this, you know?
Yeah, now's the time. And I want to get to Eigenlayer now because that has been the topic of discussion. I've even written about it like a week or two ago because it's so I think it takes a little bit to like understand because it's this concept of decentralizing trust. It's like, what the fuck do you mean decentralizing trust? Like, and what is that? And so like, I like grew to understand it, but like, I want to hear like your thoughts on it. Like, you saw Eigenlayer, like, why has it been your point of trolling so much?
Yeah, sorry. Like, you know, I really view it in a sense as like it's sort of to me like the fragmentation of consensus, like, and it's taking, you know, this security of ETH and you know, allowing it to be used to so-called, you know, secure other chains. And I think that the natural reaction for a lot of people in the community is just to be like immediately hyper bullish. Like, this is something that like so very obviously oh, sorry.
I can tell the dogs are bullish.
Yeah.
You really got them going. Yeah, but to that point, I want to get into Eigenlayer because that's something that it's been a point of trolling for you, and it's been a large topic of discussion on crypto Twitter, very large actually. And I want to get like, what do you think of Eigenlayer? Like, why is it your point of trolling? Like, why is it, you know, part of your next round of chaos or current round of chaos? I should say.
Yeah. I find like the premise is quite interesting. Using ETH to secure, you know, other chains or protocols. I view it like a bit as like what I have called now like fragmenting of consensus. It's like, you know, taking these set of rules that we have on Ethereum and now ascribing them to some other blockchain, really. And I think that like I'm using that word specifically, and then maybe adding a couple like additional slashing conditions or something. Like I said, I really like I'm not an expert on this, so I'm just like theorizing, and this is just from what I can tell. And you know, I think
you're right. That's it.
Yeah, you know, I think like it's interesting. I have some like reservations about, well, two things. I would say first off, like this kind of perpetual desire for yield. And I think that DeFi has been, well, it's not great for like, it's really taught people that like everything you should deserve yield. And let's say that like ETH staking yield comes down because there's a very large number of people staking. It's like, well, like you deserve more yield, you know? And I really don't know the ramifications of this yet, to be honest. I suspect there will be some sort of interesting like incentive misalignments. And I think, you know, generally I view blockchains as being these like systems of rules, like most simply. And you sort of ascribe to those rules or you don't. And if you don't, you go and, well, go build another blockchain or you build an app chain or whatever it is. And well, yeah, I'm really not sure about like what the conclusion of this looks like. I think it's fascinating. I don't have like a tremendous amount of insight apart from like whenever I see crypto Twitter get like hyper bullish on an idea, my gut reaction is like, okay, like, hey, what's going on here? And I think
But what's
that
the catch?
yeah, and I don't say this like in a negative way, but I do see the Ethereum community
Hmm.
especially like being hyper bullish and uh constantly kind of agreeing and you know oh yeah, like so obvious, like we should restake, like I'm not articulating this so very well, but like I would say like you look at Bitcoin and you see this kind of sclerotic growth and like consensus that is very um it's like contentious, and like people seem to disagree a lot on the most trivial things. Like to us, like they'll take 2 years to decide if you can like send Bitcoin to a wallet, you know what I mean? Like any upgrades or slight um changes to the code are deliberated for years at a time. And I think Ethereum is very much the response to this. It's the move fast, break things. And I think that's been Ethereum's, that has been the appeal, and like all of the fun games we've been able to play. But yeah, I don't
Right. Oh,
know.
yeah, we definitely just broken some things.
Yeah, exactly. Move fast, break things, and then like keep breaking. Like why not? Like no one said we had to stop breaking things. So yeah, I mean, um,
Yeah.
I suppose like one of the ideas is this kind of like would nullify the need for for alt L1s, and maybe in a sense even like L2s. I'm not so very sure. I think maybe that may have more to do with pure scaling, and this may be more singular purpose blockchains. But yeah, it's quite interesting. I'm excited to see how it goes down, and like I'm here for whatever chaos
Yeah.
ensues.
From what I'm hearing from you is people are too fast to hop on the hype train and like what everyone's like raving about, like, oh, like eigenlayer restaking, but they don't consider the unintended consequences that are going to come about through restaking. Like this is like very new. It's still experiment. It hasn't even launched yet. And I'm a huge fan of eigenlayer. I like see a bunch of ways where Frax can actually integrate eigenlayer on multiple levels potentially. But I'm also not blind to the fact of the risks that could come with eigenlayer. Like what if there's like some unintended bug in the smart contracts or like this and that. And I think like what you're mainly trolling is like the hype train that everyone's on, and it's kind of like, oh, this is gonna like take Ethereum to the next level. Like, oh, like there's gonna be no need for other alt ones. Like this is the end all be all. But there's no such thing as an end all be all. Like there's always gonna be like some other level, some other problem that people are gonna like have to like solve. And like this always happens. This always happens. Humans are fallible, and there's gonna be like something that will like come about. Hell, there's probably something. I saw this like other interesting tweet the other day. Like there's gonna be some hybrid thing between like eigenlayer and like maybe like validators that aren't part of eigenlayer, and like there's some like hybrid system. I wish I saw the tweet because I'm definitely budging it. But you're gonna see definitely like hybrid systems come out of eigenlayer. I'm sure like and also eigenlayer I'm sure won't be the only restaking solution that comes out, because that never happens. And so yeah, what I'm basically trying to say is like your trolling has a purpose and a point, and keep continuing to do your chaos, because people don't consider the unintended consequences.
Yeah, I mean that's probably more like profound than I would even consider it. Like I don't know that I'm like executing satire, at the highest level, but um yeah,
Talk about
like
an
I said,
unintended consequence.
yeah, I try to be like the thing is like I don't have I don't consider myself like some high, like very technical or even exceptionally analytical like investor by any means. I think maybe the one strength I have is I'm I don't like FOMO, and I'm pretty, I try to be pretty even keeled about these things, and I don't know what's going to come of this. I think it's interesting. I'm not, it does bring up some bigger concepts in my mind, like, if like you can just continue to restake and add these, you know, slashing conditions. It really is like you're levering up on an agreement of rules. And I wrote this like long tweet thread that was like a
Mm.
total troll about Eigenlayer, and like maybe, I mean, I have no idea whether or not it's like relevant at all, but I think that yeah, it's interesting for sure. And I think that, personally, well, this is a little bit of a segue, but I mean, I see app chains being, um, like, to me, it makes sense. I'm not saying it's going to happen. And I think there are some like, you know, like composability and atomicity and some of these like words that the technical people use, as to why like they may not be so feasible. But from like a from like this incentive based thinking, like to me it makes very logical sense that applications would want a bigger piece of the pie, and like businesses
Hmm.
tend to try to continue to capture larger and larger pieces. Like this is how they stay alive. Like this isn't, we're not doing something like so very novel that the laws of economics or finance don't apply. And yeah, I think it'll be quite interesting. Like I think like Eigenlayer is a part of this. I think that L2s and app chains in general are part of this. Like when these applications or chains are able to garner a large sticky user base that, may come directly to that chain for a certain application or protocol. And we're already seeing this to some extent with Arbitrum and GMX and Vesta and these like sort of L2 specific applications. Like I'm not, I don't have such strong feelings about like whether the app chain thesis is right or wrong. But like when I hear the Cosmos guys talk about this, I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like that seems pretty logical. Um, so I don't know. Like it will be very interesting to see. And like, this is to me like this is all innovation. This is all technology. And the reason I say that is because at times that isn't so reconcilable with like some ideas in crypto, which may be ossification and immutability. And I think that in a lot of ways,
Mm.
I'm quite bullish, if only because I think that people they'll just continue to move fast and break things. And like, why wouldn't we try an L3? Like, why wouldn't we try restaking 12 times? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I deserve that, you know? So,
I deserve that
yeah,
yield. I deserve a piece of the
exactly.
pie. I deserve that
Yeah,
real estate. Yeah.
yeah, like that's kind of how I view it. And like I do think that like my general outlook probably doesn't please any specific set of, communities. Like I have like very disparate thoughts on a lot of this stuff. Like on one hand, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds right. And then, I may make some people mad about like what I think or what I say. But, I view this like fundamentally, I think that would be what like to take away from this. I think this is technology, and like the way that technology stays alive is by continuing to innovate. And it's not
Yeah.
like Android releases like the best camera and Apple's like, well, good game, like, it was fun playing and we have to give up now.
it's
Like
it's
they go and
over.
make,
Pack it
yeah,
up.
exactly. Like they go and try to make a better camera. And like I think this is also in many ways how I view a lot of applications in and especially in DeFi, which I think is kind of interesting. Like, this idea of immutability and ossification and like sort of, really trying to remove humans from the equation. And I'm like, well, like, you know, you guys are trying to capture the market. You guys are trying to continue to innovate and stay abreast of, whatever type of innovations are coming about. And like, the way you do that is like you keep changing. Like it's not like you keep breaking. You don't stop breaking because like there's some ethos involved. At least I would say that from the application layer. So that was a bit of a
Yeah,
digression,
I
but
think no, that was very well said. I think at the end of the day, people like to call us like pioneers to new land, and you know what like pioneers do? They go settle and they want real estate. You know what the closest thing to real estate is? Owning your own blocks and like owning your own chain, and that's why everybody wants metaverse. Yeah, the next big thing, metaverse real estate. Like I'm about to like buy a cruise liner for 500 ETH. Let's go. Call it the Doge liner. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like everybody wants like their own piece of the pie, and like that's why. And like if you look at VCs, like there's so many L1s, but yet they keep investing in L1s because that is still like how they view it. Like, hey, like might as well like let's do it again. Let's own the piece of the pie again. Of like, we'll try it this way with like a different language, or like, oh, we'll try it this way, like faster transaction speed. Bring it back to 2018. Like this. I mean, we've heard it over and over again. So like, I mean, you played the L1 game. Like, what is your take on like VCs just keep going with these L1s? Now you have like fucking Aptos and Sui and whatnot.
yeah, like this has been like maybe one of my bigger points of contention really with the direction that crypto has gone. I think like when I first got into crypto, I wasn't doing any type of like research, and I was very much just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But I think one thing that kind of resonated was, or I thought was actually sort of interesting, was the ability for retail to get in on the ground floor of some business, or and crypto enabled that. And the ICO craze was, I mean, it was pretty much all rugs, but we all got in to the rugs at the same time. And there's something like, I think, profound about that. And, I think it's interesting, like post ICO, there have been regulatory constraints, and like, I think we need to be understanding of that to some extent. Like, like founders can't really do launches, at least in the capacity that we may view as most fair or, most mission aligned. But I have had a lot of reservations about like some of the direction that I've seen VCs go in this space. And, it's funny, like I don't fault VCs, like at least no, I don't fault any individual VCs, and like this is them maximizing their own utility as well. Like if they can get seed rounds earlier than retail, like why shouldn't they? You know what I mean? But it does, I think, start to bring into question like, what are we doing here? Like at what point can we just sort of admit that this is, I think if we are trying to mitigate the ability for privileged actors in these systems to have advantages, then I think that VCs have done a good job of like sort of creating moats that retail may not have access to. And I've been quite critical. I think that especially I've been sort of maybe even like I find the most egregious being VCs who invest in the equity side of the team and then also have some type of dual token warrant or equity. I mean, I think that is like fundamentally flawed from an ideological standpoint. Like granted, like, once again, like I don't have like some, I suppose if you can do it, you can do it. But I think that like, I look at something like Uniswap, and I've critiqued this a lot, but like, and I apologize in advance. And I'm using Uniswap just as an example here, and this could probably be extrapolated to a lot of the bigger DeFi protocols now. But I tweeted this. I said, I don't know that Uniswap holders, Uni holders, or the Uniswap DAO has a very good idea as to how Uniswap intends to make money over the long run. I mean, this is a business that fundamentally needs to make money. I do think that Paradigm and A16Z and the institutional investors have a pretty good idea. And I think that this kind of like governance and DAO, I think it's like, retail are very impressionable and they want to be in on the ground floor of the rails of finance, And I think that I look at this and I think, Paradigm and A16Z just thrust $90 million into like a Series B or something, and they aren't doing that to fund public goods. Like maybe what ends up getting built is, this is another thing I troll about quite a bit, this public goods idea, but maybe like I can accept that like what ends up getting built is like some iteration of a public good, if you will. But they have investment committees, like they have certain IRRs that they intend to achieve. Like they're not doing this to create some like open, free, permissionless and decentralized application. Now, ideally, the long run of this is exactly that, and I'm not. I'm willing to accept that these may converge on like much more fair systems, but I think when I see equity investments in teams that and this is the other thing, it's like Uniswap, the DAO, doesn't have a tremendous amount of influence on what code is released. You know what I mean? It's like they may be able to direct how that code is used after it's launched. But in terms of who is writing the code and writing the incentive structures in off the rip, it's Uniswap Labs. I'm really like harping on this, but I think it is an interesting case study because like Uniswap consistently does 60 or 70% of the volume and fees that the Ethereum protocol does in a day. So I'm not suggesting that an application is necessarily representative of a blockchain as a whole, but like this is about as good as it gets in terms of like where the community's mind is at. And Uniswap was initially funded by a grant from the Ethereum Foundation, and I just see this creep whereby VCs and large pools of capital see that these things could be extremely lucrative. They're not right now, but they could be. And yeah, I have a lot of reservations about that. Like, and it has turned me away to, at least to some extent, with a lot of like sort of the narratives I see. Sorry, but also I didn't really answer. So go ahead.
No. I think you bring up like a really great point. Like, you have these token holders that exist, and even after the token is released for a while, Uniswap goes and raises equity round that the token holders don't, they don't really see anything of because it's in like a company. It's not in the protocol. It's the company behind Uniswap Labs. And you bring up another really good point that I haven't even thought of before, that like, yes, the people, like the token holders can direct where the code goes, but they don't direct like how, like what, I guess like what they code. And I'm not even sure if like any protocol, like any token holder protocol can do that or like has the power to do that. I feel like the teams themselves decide like where to go, this and that. But I see your point of like misaligned incentives. And this has been like a major theme of this entire podcast of like, okay, like what are we actually building? What are we actually building towards? Like, are we playing this game of towards decentralization, or are we playing decentralized theater? Whether it's towards like, self-limiting ourselves with our like ETH stakes, but like that kind of like puts into question of this like free market principles, or or you're talking about here, like, okay, like we have this token, but we're raising equity around like what is the Uniswap team incentivized to do? You bring up like you're trolling, and your points bring up a lot of important questions. And I don't think like your purpose is to have an answer, because you're an agent of chaos. That's not your point.
No, I don't.
It's like just to like get the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't. But with your chaos, you ask the right questions, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're on Flywheel Pod. Because I don't have the answers. I'm just I'm just the messenger. I can like articulate what you're saying in a different way, but like hell, I'm not that smart. I'm just like here, like listening. Kiet, what are your thoughts? You've been listening this entire podcast. Like, what do you think of like this whole theme of incentives?
I mean, well, first I just want to comment on Gwart, how he just, like he says, he just asks the questions and he kind of stirs the pot. And it's like, I just feel like if we were all in an open town hall and CT is like just this open space town hall, there's just this voice in the back, right? Because Gwart is short and you can't really see, and he just shouts up about this question. Everyone's just like, oh yeah, let's talk about that question.
You're like Socrates, because Socrates just like asked questions. He was just like smelly old dude in the back that like just kept on asking questions. He didn't have any answers. He's like, well, how do you know what you know? You know this and that. Like, you sure? Like, and like he'll just like kind of like pick at you and just pick at you and pick at you. And that's exactly what you do. Like Socrates didn't have the answers. And, he literally pissed off people so much that the city of Athens was like, oh, you're corrupting the youth. And they forced him to take hemlock. And so, but like,
yes, I am Socrates.
Socrates, of course.
Perfect. Soundbite. End the pod there.
Yes. Yeah, like Socrates. Yeah. Yeah, but like, and, I mean, that's the first thing kids. But Kiet, I cut you off. But continue.
yeah, and then once we started kind of getting down to this, should we limit like Lido's reach? But that again go against the free market ideology and philosophy. And then you harped on the VC side, and that led me to think the same thing. I was like, well, we shouldn't harp on them either, because they're just doing what they were made to do, and they just happen to do it really well. And then now like it kind of leads me back to thinking like, is this whole crypto thing we're doing just a complete charades of just like, this is just the new casino that we have just chosen to come and play? And now when we feel like the house, or in this case there is no house, right, because everything is kind of open and there's kind of no rules, like have we just exchanged like our the current casino for this new digital one, where the rules are literally being made up kind of as they go? And then once somebody figures out how to hack it, like how Lido did, where they just grew to 30% of the market share, and they're like, well, this is where we are now. We're not going to stop. Like, this is where we find ourselves. So I'm just thinking, is there a way back to this kind of more utopia-like world that crypto was going to promise, democratized access for all and equity for all and da-da-da-da-da? Like, is there a path back?
I think like that path is not going to be reached in like the current form of DeFi, especially like if you think about it, it's like mostly like people in like the first world developed countries like playing in this casino. Let's be real. I think like that path of actual like democratic access to financial opportunities that didn't exist because your banking system's fucked up, it's going to come in the developing world. Like I think the biggest innovations for like are probably going to come from like places where like they actually need it, and you actually do see that. I think like the biggest like not mind blowing, but it makes sense. But it's kind of like crazy to think about. The most like the highest used stablecoin in Iran is USDT on Tron, like because that's just the cheapest and fastest thing to use. And so like it's interesting, like the developing world, like they like use crypto out of necessity. Like I'm here in Brazil right now, and I see like what people are building. And I've seen what people have been building because I've been here like going back and forth for a few years. And they were like, I see them like hopping on trends before anyone else. Like they were building on Binance Smart Chain back in like winter 2020, and this and that. And so like you're more like, I mean, it's definitely not impossible to see payment solutions to like, or like real world solutions that come out of like the first world, but like the very first worldy, they're like, oh, like let's put like treasury yield bonds on chain, like this and that, blah blah blah. They're not like really like thing that does like the average person can access. And the reason for that, it's like not very profitable to like make things for consumers unless it's done at a massive scale. And so like it's gonna have to be like, you know, it's kind of like the same of when Europe used to be a backwater in like 1500s, 1600s. Then they had navigation and they were like forced to like just go out and just like trade. And then that's how all these European powers like built their own wealth. It's kind of like the same thing. Like, you know, these countries, like they don't have like, you know, trade like routes being blocked by the Ottoman Empire, this and that, but they do have like, you know, their internal banking systems are just absolute like trash. And so they have like these new ones come about, whether they're like decentralized rails on like, you know, Ethereum or like other, or like all ones, or even like Binance. Binance is the banking layer for a ton of countries in Africa and the developing world. And I feel like the one thing Ethereum people discount is like the reach of centralized actors in the developing world and how much they're getting it right. And Ethereum is just not getting it right now because it's just too expensive to use. And even with L2s coming online, I still hear stories of like, you know, I've like paid people before in developing countries to do like certain jobs, this and that. And I said like, oh, like, can I send you like some stuff, like some stable coins on Optimism? And they're like, what's Optimism? Like, can you send it to me on Avalanche or BNB? And I'm just like thinking to myself, like, well, it's like, damn, like, it's like what you're saying. Like, are we like actually like doing our job of like trying to, if our job is to like open access and equal access to all, are we doing it? Like, no, it's like you see these like incentives misaligned. I don't know.
That you're messing around with restaking and restaking and restaking.
Yeah,
you know, that's what we're doing.
We're restaking to the 8th power over here. But these are like important questions, and I thought of this as well. I know that was like a long-winded rant, but
no, Dave, that was good. Gwart, I actually wanted to ask you about like, what are your thoughts on the stablecoin landscape of how the largest stablecoins are essentially centralized parties? Do you think that's also, you know, free market doing its thing, and that we're never ever going to see a decentralized stablecoin, and we always need this kind of fiat off ramp that can just never be overcome?
Yeah, I'll give like sort of a Bitcoiner answer here and tell you that like I find like the separation of money and state to be like one of the most at least ideologically one of the most kind of empowering concepts. So I'm personally like a bit I don't know. I think that crypto has really changed in a sense, and you know, I'm not suggesting for bad or worse, but I think there's been a big push for stable coins. I've seen this actually very recently with Ethereum, members of like the Ethereum Foundation pushing for, well, what they say decentralized stable coins. And you know, like to your question, I think the fact of the matter is like the market wants centralized stablecoins. So like the market has been given centralized stablecoins, not dissimilar to the market having wanted Ponzi's, and so the market getting Ponzi's, and then market wanting bigger Ponzi's, so the market got bigger Ponzi's, and then like all of a sudden we as crypto people are like, well, no, there's value in there. Like we've like this is an emerging technology. Like we found like the value, and I'm like, well, like you just built a lot of Ponzi's, and I think it's like, yeah, it's a bit presumptuous to assume that there's like a lot of value in there when what the market wanted was Ponzi's. And so I think this is largely like what you were saying. I mean, this is a construct of what people demand, and I don't have like very good feelings about that. And like that was kind of back to my Bitcoin maxi laser eye point, which is like I still find like the separation of money from state to be like a very profound concept, at least, right? Like I don't know about hyper Bitcoinization. Like I have some like thoughts about that, but the thing is, I don't think that creating like a bearer asset token of fiat currency is the vision. And I would especially say that centralized stable coins are they also kind of, I think, have similar network effects with staking derivatives, whereby they can really kind of generate escape velocity, and everybody will be using centralized stable coins. And I have I have a lot of reservations, I think, about Ethereum being very centralized stablecoin based. But once again, now I have to kind of like bring myself back to reality and realize that my ideological stance isn't necessarily what the market cares about. And it depends on like what we're really engineering for here. And like, if we're going to build the rails for essentially a centralized stablecoin transmission network, then so be it. But I think that Circle, especially with Ethereum, I would say that Circle has I would consider it to be sort of privileged actor status. And I don't think it's so like, I don't think it's really great for like the the long-term vision, but my long-term vision isn't really that important.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point here with like the market gives what people want. If the market wants centralized stablecoins, you got centralized stablecoins. If the market wants Ponzi's, you got Ponzi's. If the market wants Beanie Babies, you got Beanie Babies. And I think like we go like back to the Beanie Babies, and now we understand like what you mean. Like the market is always right. It's always just like a temperature check on like this collective psychology of like people's desires. Whether no matter how irrational they may be.
But Dave, is there a point where the market chooses to better improve itself? Because if we were just to engage in this, degeneracy and debauchery all the time, then we would never really advance forward. But that's really not true.
Yeah,
We've advanced very far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it comes to a point of self-policing and self-regulation of saying like, whoa, let's like hold the brakes here, and like let's like think about things, like whether it's with BTC miners like deciding to like give up like their 51% hash rate, or the way that Ethereum decided to go proof of stake and tried to like make it as decentralized as possible. But I say like as possible because I think US like stablecoins were centralized stablecoins were an unintended consequence of of like what the market wanted. And it's just like, because Tether started as Omnichain, it started as, Omnichain on Bitcoin. And then it just made more sense to put it, like you do it a lot faster on, ERC20 and Tether. So the stablecoin of centralized exchanges to this day, USDC found their use case being like the on-off ramp of DeFi. And it still is to this day. And I think with like dollar peg stablecoins, like if you're going to be like a dollar peg stablecoin or like any fiat peg stablecoin, you're always going to be like pegged to the real world somehow. If you want to scale, you can go like the LEOC route or RAI route, but like those don't like scale in the same way that Frax or DAI or like the centralized stablecoins do, because they chose that design choice for like the super decentralization maxis, which is fine, which is like that's the market deciding that it wants that.
Not a single person like has any idea what RAI does. Like I've read about RAI like probably 10 times now, and I could not articulate how this basket of goods is derived. But that's not to say anything, like it was probably just lost on me. But yeah, like to your point, like I got on, it's funny, like I got on the RAI website the other day, and it was like $2.27, and I was like what? Like what is this pegged to, like and I also saw some sort of like interesting discussions about Vitalik had like collateralized his ETH with RAI, and there's some like sneaky trick, I think, with RAI that
some weird trick.
I'm not sure what it, I think, I don't know, like I'm really just kind of spreading misinformation right now, as is my prerogative, but I'm not so, like, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I know, to your point, like I don't think right now, at least, the world wants RAI,
Yeah, and it's also funny because I've come to kind of the thesis that like, you know, dollar peg stablecoins are like, you know, if they want to scale, they have to attach to the real world somehow. That's why Frax is pursuing like their Fed master account. But if you want like a decentralized stablecoin, like probably the closest thing we have that like the closest thing we have to a medium of exchange that's a decentralized cryptocurrency right now is ETH. ETH, whether you know, I see that being the decentralized stablecoin right now. But you can also like, I'm not really up to date with the Bitcoin community, although I've been around a few Bitcoiners here in Brazil, and it seems like the Lightning network is taking up a little bit. So like maybe that becomes like a decentralized, like more decentralized payments. But I only see these things becoming like a medium of exchange if they stop being so volatile and they like finally like, you know, we have our cycles and maybe we have like one or two more cycles left in us. But like after those like one or two more cycles, then it's like those things like kind of like reach an equilibrium and they kind of reach their, you know, their spread and like they kind of just slowly grow. And who knows, maybe BTC becomes, you know, what gold is for central banks and you know, central banks and countries just hold BTC. Hell, maybe like ETH is put on balance sheets because companies need to pay for gas, so it's put for operational costs. Like this is how like, you know, these cryptocurrencies reach like the end game per se. But like you know, and at that point, like we'll see. I don't know if I'll ever see like people like paying for like coffee with ETH or BTC, but you're probably going to see like large institutional actors or countries like move around making large purchases, whether it's for commodities or whether it's for services with these decentralized currencies, especially with the US and how it's been acting on the world stage and like, you know, kind of like military, like using like the whole SWIFT system and the dollar system to like bully other countries around per se. So,
Mic drop.
and right.
Yeah, I would agree
I
with
think
all
all
of
you
that.
guys are correct. Same. Because then, like, if I was just thinking about the one most ludicrous thing that happened this Ponzi was like all the ohm forks.
The ohm forks.
If somebody were to drop an ohm fork right now, all three of us would be like, "Yo, that is so tone deaf. Like, did you just not see what had
Like,
happened?"
bro, it's not 2021. Yeah.
Right. So, you know, the market clearly wanted ohm forks at one point in time, right? Actually, they wanted it so much they 9-9'd, right? And then now, fast forward, if you were to do something like that now, completely tone deaf. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you're right that the market does kind of police itself over time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And like at the end of the day, I think Vitalik, he made a great point on Bankless. I watched one of his latest Bankless interviews. He talks about like with crypto adoption, like whether it's going to look like the language Esperanto, whether it's going to look like, you know, Linux, or it's going to look like the internet. Like Esperanto, no adoption. Linux, like only people that are technically advanced use it, and then the internet, everybody uses it. And we're definitely not at Esperanto, but like it's still a question of if we're like crypto, like DeFi is going to be like Linux or if DeFi is going to be like, you know, the internet. And I feel like the only way for it to get to the internet if there's like actual adoption and like, you know, and like people don't even notice that they're using it. And like, will we get to that point? I don't know. Like, Gwart, like, what's your take on like, do you see actual adoption happening, you know, within like 5-10 years, or do you think we're like in this like casino purgatory?
I I do think some of the primitives that have come out of this most recent cycle have real application. And actually, unfortunately, I think, well, I say unfortunately, I suppose this depends on how you view this, but like I do think stable coins are a very obvious use case. It's not, you know, it's not the use case I want, but maybe it's the use case we need, and so it is what it is. I, you know, I kind of started by saying that like I'm very optimistic, but I'm not sure about what. And I do view smart contract functionality, however you want to interpret that, as being there is some real innovation there. Like, and as someone who is typically maybe cynical about like the level of innovation, I think there is something there for sure. And
I don't know what yet. And I think that kind of goes to what I was saying before, to the extent that like, most DeFi was used to do more DeFi. And right now it's not like so immediately clear to me how we translate this. But I think it's there. Like, and some of these primitives, I think, like for example, like I'm not like sold. Actually, I should rephrase this. I'm very much not sold on like the concept of pooling two tokens together and that being like a rational way to trade in markets. Like I think that I don't know that like the current setup of AMMs is like a fundamentally sustainable model. I think that like DEXs in general, like I don't know if they, I'm really not like was never much of a trader or somebody who knew how to really analyze these systems and know whether I was getting a good price or sandwiched or front run. But like I think that I don't see why we couldn't build very low friction exchanges on blockchains. And I think there is some like credible argument that like, finality and, permissionlessness, these are like, there is value here. I think, most of what I have seen is sort of, okay, guys, like, let's tone it down. Like there's some, there's something here, but like, how this kind of proliferates isn't so obvious to me yet. But, there, like the fact of the matter is like, there is, we talk about VCs, like, there is so very much money in this space at this point that it's like something's gonna come out of it. Like, it's almost it's almost too big to fail in the sense that like there's a lot of funding, and I think there are some like, I think Lynn Alden said this one time. Now I'm really exposing myself as like a Bitcoiner, but I think she said like, a lot of DeFi is kind of like incremental improvements to the tech stack. And I think that like that's a reasonable take. Like, like this seems like very logical to me. Now, with that said, and I'll kind of end at this, at least this kind of point. Like this is dependent on whether mainstream adoption values the ethos that we do. Like, and I don't know that I could convince my mom to use something that she can't like reverse if she gets scammed, like it's not like, we're still at the point where most of these ideas are like pretty obscure. And I think we have to be very realistic that like most DeFi protocols are used by like 1,000 people a day. You know what I mean? Like as much if you only hung out on, if you only hung out on crypto Twitter, like you would feel like the world runs on crypto rails, and the reality is like the world does not run on crypto rails. And there's good reason for that. Like, I know this is sort of an oft brought up point, but like the UX and UI is still like very, very confusing, and I still have problems. And yeah, granted, I'm not the most savvy chain user, but I'm like, I've used MetaMask a fair number of times, and it's like, it's not intuitive, and like, it's kind of a lame, point to make because everybody says that like wallets or, that's what's going to bring mainstream adoption. But like, I do think at least, maybe we're not going to get the next billion users, but like maybe the next 50 million are going to want a wallet that's better.
Yeah. That's like a common theme. It's like, wallets are going to be like the thing of next cycle, this and that. But yeah, I feel like this is a good place to end it. Kiet,
cool.
I think we go into the lightning round. Gwart, this has been awesome. Like, I've really enjoyed listening, and just like, I feel like I've just been like very meditative. Like, I was just like out in the Greek town square, just like
I'm
listening
Socrates
to your concerns. You're Gwartites. Actually, no, I just completely read that. Soccer Gwart. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
We'll work on that. We'll workshop the name.
Yeah, we're gonna. Yeah, the Socrates. All right. Anyways, let's get to this lightning round. Kit, go ahead.
Yeah, so Gwart, normally we kind of end the pod with a series of questions just to kind of get you know you better as like a human, you know. So the first question is, what was when was the first time you touched the chain? And sexes don't count. What was your virgin crypto experience?
It had to be in late 2020, and I think it was Ethereum. Yeah, because prior to that, like 2017, 2018, I think I was exclusively on like Coinbase or some like janky like Stellar Lumens wallet or something of that sort back when I was degenning.
Got it. Okay. And then second question is, what is your favorite off-chain touch grass activity? What are some of your hobbies and interests?
Um, I play a good bit of golf. Uh, like I would say that would be like a recreational activity in which I engage. I'm a golfer. Not very good, but I like to go out and swing the sticks.
All right, Gwart. What's some advice you'd give to your younger self?
Well, I think like most everyone must answer like, but you can't be buy Bitcoin. Okay,
I know what you're gonna say, but no, don't say it. Don't say it.
Don't do it.
No, I was about to say
okay.
You can't do that one.
I think I have gotten like more even keeled as I've gone, through my crypto journey. But I think I could have told myself even earlier on to like, sleep on it. Like if you're feeling like you're gonna FOMO into something, like maybe sleep on it, and that maybe isn't like the most common advice given like crypto prices can really surge, but I've definitely done my fair share of just max aping into something because everyone was doing it, and like not even thinking about whether it was not thinking about whether it was valuable, obviously, like, but even thinking if it was like a good meme, like it could have been a bad meme, and it's just max ape because you see a few things. So I think like taking a bit of time, and like you don't have to invest on a thesis like this is going to change the world, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to be like a VC who's all about theses and whatnot. You can play the meme game, but even the meme game requires a bit of thought.
Yeah, or maybe no thought at all. Maybe just like left curve it, like, oh, this is trendy.
Yeah.
And then the last question to kind of sign us out here is, if you weren't working in crypto, and what would your full-time career path be like right now?
I was playing poker like, I guess during COVID, like basically full time. And I have done a bit of like real estate investment on the side, but I don't think I would have like a very structured career. Gwart doesn't like to be chained, I like to be able to kind of do whatever I want.
Gwart is a free spirit.
That's precisely how I should be known.
You know who else was a free spirit? Socrates. That dude was just...
He was. Right.
Floating around. He was. Yeah. Spot on. And on that note, Gwart, it's been fun. It's been enlightening. And it's been great having you on. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
And hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was fun. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode of Flywheel with Gwart. And if you want to really get into this episode, make sure you check out our Substack below. We have a whole article written with every little detail of maybe even some things you missed. So make sure you check that out. And also, don't forget to watch our post game with me, Kiet, and Sam, breaking down what happened this episode. We really get into it, and we've been really getting to our Substack over the past few weeks. Kiet, can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so we have content lined up pretty much every single day for you. And like Dave said, we have written down what we talked about in the Gwart pod. So we basically took notes for you guys as well. So go there and take a look at that. And the post game show.
Hey, listen to this. Yeah, listen to this. We got Frax in review for the week. We got Frax check. We got the whole pod review. We have assortment of articles. We have money moves. We have it all. It's all in our Substack. So make sure you subscribe to that. Don't miss out on what we have to say. And if you don't want to miss an episode of Flywheel, make sure you subscribe. Leave us a comment. Give us a like. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at FlywheelFi. Join our discussion on Telegram at FlywheelFi. You can follow me on Twitter at DeFi Dave.
Follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And check out the postgame. Everything said on this episode is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly for educational purposes and is not an investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice whatsoever. Please talk to your accountant and do your own research.